Liftoff here. Happy Thursday, everyone. Here we are with Paul Levine show, and we actually have a topic today. We're going to talk about the three main reasons to invest in commercial real estate. I'm here. I'm Greg Dixon, and of course, Paul Levine is here. Else, he's the name of the show. And Betty Withrow. So we've been helping him with his launch his book and help him get out into the world. He does a lot himself. He's not shy in retiring in any way. And anyway, he's going to introduce himself a bit here and talk about um, the main topic for today.
Hello, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Paul Levine. I am a commercial realtor. I have been for about 6 or 7 years. But before getting to be a commercial realtor, I was a certified public accountant, a practicing CPA for over 50 years. I have more income tax education, knowledge, experience, creativity, and expertise than anyone else out there doing what I do. And I love what I do. And in addition, I was also a university professor over at Cal State Los Angeles for 6.5 of those years that I also was a practicing accountant. My contact information is my telephone number is 818-298-4000. And my email address is plevine, L-E-V as in Victor, I-N-E, at lspropertypartnersllc.com. The topic for today is that there are 3 reasons to invest in real estate. I will give you 4, but I'll give you the last one at the end. First one is that you want cash flow. And you want cash flow on what everybody calls passive income. And the reason I put the quotes around passive income is because there's a definition that you talk with to other investors. And then there's a definition that the Internal Revenue Service loves. And you got to make sure that you understand that even though you are saying that you want the cash flow and you know who you're talking to, so you know how they are taking it, that the IRS has a totally different definition. So you want cash flow, and why do you want cash flow? You're going to invest in real estate and you're going to put up a down payment. And let's say that your first foray into commercial real estate is very simple. It's either a single family residence or a 3 or 4-plex apartment building, because 3 or 4-plex gets financed by a mortgage as if it was a single family residence. So this is pretty easy for you. So you invest in real estate and you're going to do it now for the cash flow. So you have to make sure that the rent you receive is greater than the expenses of running the property. And that rent that you receive has to cover anything that you pay. For example, you've got to have insurance. You can't not. You may have homeowners association dues that, as the owner of the property, you want to pay to know that it's current. You will have repairs and maintenance. You may or may not pay for utilities. You may pay for gardening. If it has a pool, you may pay for pool service. So what you're looking to do is get the rent income greater than all of those expenses. And sometimes, and I am dealing with the situation right now with a client, sometimes you don't get there at the first shot. And the reason for that, in this case, and it was a triplex, was that the client had to get a loan at a very high interest rates because of where we are now. But we all pretty much know that the interest rates are going to come down before the election, or else the Democrats aren't going to be elected to door catcher. So we know, and we're setting up for 6 months from today, he will have a new loan. So that loan will be at a lower interest rate, and therefore that loan will also be at a lower amount, at a lower payment. So he will then have cash flow, whereas now he doesn't. Another reason he doesn't have his cash flow now is because the rents are too low. And this is something that befuddles me. I don't understand. So many times, and this is one of the cases, so many times I hear the situation of, well, the rents are below market and they can be raised. And if they can be raised, why didn't the owner raise them? Why didn't the prior owner raise them? Is he just a benevolent soul? Does he care about his tenants that much? What's the reason? Because we're in this for making money, and you don't um, have the rents lower than market. You bring them up. So what my client will do is he will go in with the current rents. He is allowed to raise them a certain percent every year, which he will. And then if anybody moves out, when the person takes over that apartment and moves in, he will be able to get market rent for it. So he will up his cash flow. The one of the three reasons for investing in real estate, excuse me, one of the three reasons for investing in real estate, and the cash flow will allow him to pay the mortgage. Now, when we say cash flow, we have the rental income minus the direct rental expenses. Mortgage interest and the mortgage payment are separate, and the cash flow pays for that. That's a little lesson in cash flow. There are lots of variations. By the way, there are some real estate investments that generate better cash flow than others. One of my favorite investments is apartment buildings, and that doesn't get as good a cash flow as self-storage facilities. And so self-storage facilities get better cash flow. But now let's go on to the second reason. The apartment buildings get better appreciation. And now we have a situation where you buy or build an apartment building. And by the way, if you build the apartment building, if you spend on the land and the building, the improvements, if you spend, oh, let's say $3 million, the day that it's done, it's probably worth $3.4 million. And that's immediate appreciation. The other appreciation takes time. And what happens is, number one, you increase rents. Well, if you increase rents, you increase cash flow. And realize that appreciation is without a doubt tied to the value of the property. And the way that you derive the value of the property is you take the cash flow and you divide it by something called the cap rate. This can get complicated, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. But the cap rate tells you about the condition of the building, if there is deferred maintenance of any value that has to be done either before or after taking ownership of the building. It has to do with the community. The community may be stagnant and not going anywhere and doesn't have any great possibilities. And there's not going to be a high appreciation, and there will not be a good cap rate. By the way, the lower the cap rate, the higher the value of the property, and that's because it's the bottom number in a division. So it's the apartment rent, it's the community, it's also a number of intangibles. My best desire, if I'm going to buy an apartment building or build an apartment building, is to do it with commercial stores on the bottom, retail stores. And why do you want that? Number one, it brings traffic to the area. Number two, the retail stores pay more rent per square foot than the apartments. So you're making better money. Number three, you might want to have a really nice restaurant downstairs. Obviously, retail would be on the ground floor. You might want a restaurant there or a store that will bring people there on a regular basis. And the better that the stores do, the better that your real estate investment is going to do by giving you appreciation. And that's important. Also, I like appreciation for another reason. Appreciation is taxed at a capital gain rate. In other words, you buy property, let's say for $1 million, you sell it for $1.3 million. That $300,000 of appreciation gets taxed at 20%, whereas the regular cash flow per month in that property is going to be taxed at up to 37%. So you have a lower tax rate and you do save income taxes. The third reason is income tax benefits. And this is one of the best things going because I've got all of that experience and I can lead you in the right direction. The income tax benefits are when you invest in commercial real estate, you do what's known as a cost segregation study, because one of your biggest and most effective deductions is depreciation. And I will give you, being a university professor, I will give you the definition of depreciation, and that is the systematic allocation of cost of a fixed or non-monetary asset over the period of benefit. I may have mentioned this last week, but the period of benefit, unfortunately, is dictated by the Internal Revenue Service. And the Internal Revenue Service states, the Internal Revenue Code states that multifamily housing, residential, gets a useful life of 27 and a half years, and you have to take that straight line each and every year the same amount. And for non-residential real estate, for office buildings, for self-storage facilities, for any other type of commercial real estate, the life is 39 years. Well, you have to spread it over 39 years. You're not getting a great amount of depreciation every year. And what a cost segregation study does is it comes in and tells you that the land is so much money. They don't tell you that, I tell you that. But the land is valued at so much, and land is not depreciable because land is not going anywhere. And the structure itself, the ceiling, the floors, the walls are the structure, and that structure will be depreciated in an apartment building over 27 and a half years. And then you have the ceiling fans, and you have the other things that are attached to the building, and the appliances, and the kitchen cabinets, and the countertop, and all of that good stuff. And that is what we call tangible personal property. And that gets depreciated over either 5, 7, or 15 years. Most of what I just mentioned gets 5-year depreciation. And then there is something called bonus depreciation. And bonus depreciation says, or said, that up through 12/31/22, a couple of years ago, that you could take 100% of the value of those tangible personal property assets and take a deduction in 1 year. That's a huge deduction. And then you still have to value the building, the structure, and depreciate that over 27 and a half years. But the parts that you take out of the structure, you're either going to depreciate it, as I said, 5, 7, or 15 years, which is a much shorter time. And the shorter amount of time, the more annual depreciation you get. And instead of straight line depreciation, you can take depreciation, excuse me, what we call accelerated depreciation. And you take accelerated depreciation and you're going to get a very nice deduction. And like I started to say, if you go back to 2022, you were allowed to take 100% of the total of those assets in 1 year. And that went down to 80% in 23 and 60% currently in 24. And then it's supposed to go 20% a year until it's gone. But there's something you have to know. And the thing you have to know is there is a joint bill in Congress supported by both the Democrats and the Republicans to extend this bonus depreciation over until 2025 at 100%. So they're going to take away the phase out and give you a tremendous benefit. And the IRS is already looking forward to getting a large number of federal income tax returns for amended returns, because in 2023, when everybody was taking 80%, if this bill passes and it's 100%, then everybody's going to go back and get the bigger deduction. That's all the good stuff. There are things that you have to deal with. And some of those things that you have to deal with are the fact that if you are a real estate professional, you get to deduct all of those items that we just talked about. If you are not a real estate professional, and by the way, I will get into that in another Zoom meeting. If you are not a real estate professional, then you are limited to matching the income and the expenses up here. And then once you take them down the funnel, you can only take a $25,000 loss. And that $25,000 loss may be further reduced by the particular situations on your income tax return. So we're talking about knowing a lot of different things, but understanding that you can't have it all in one shot. And if you do, something's wrong. Excuse me. And when I say something is wrong, Greg, I'd like to see you talk this long without taking a drink.
Yeah. So, are you ready for a detour?
Not yet. I want to finish this one thought.
Okay.
If you are ever told that you will do this and you don't have to pay any taxes, there are situations where that occurs, but very few. So you better look at the person bringing this investment to you, because something is somewhat shady. And that's something that bothers me. Unfortunately, doctors, MDs, are targeted like you can't believe, and they are told that they will save so much in income taxes and they won't have to pay income taxes. And they're gullible, because they're great in medicine, but they're lousy, and I mean lousy, when it comes to business. And then pro athletes are the same situation. They're great at what they do. I couldn't hit a fastball at 100 miles an hour, even when I was younger. I couldn't get the bat around that fast. But they don't know how to manage their money. And unfortunately, there are so many unscrupulous people out there that take them for everything they've got. And you've got to find somebody that cares about you, and you have to find someone who is extremely competent. Now you guys can come back.
Yeah, so there was something you said earlier that I want to follow up on, and you were talking about developing like an apartment building with retail stores at the ground floor and a nice restaurant. So I have an example. One of the video projects I did was a United Church in North Vancouver. It was a really old building. The building was bad from the day it was built, and then it was just a total mess, and they needed money. So they worked with a developer. They redeveloped, built basically a new spiritual center for themselves, and then condos, right? And so everybody ended up winning. I know a number of places, Unities and things, they have proposals to do exactly what you're talking about: redevelop the property, build maybe 20 or 30 floors of housing with 1 or 2 floors of retail space and the ground floor and the restaurant. So the density is people, if it's a good restaurant and they've got the shops they need, they barely need to go anywhere. They don't need a car necessarily.
In China, you
Yeah.
have total communities
Yeah.
built into behind the gates, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they have the apartment buildings, and their apartment buildings are 40, 50 stories high because they got a lot of people. I mean, we have 360 million people, and they have about 1.4 to 1.5 billion people, and it's only 5% bigger than the United States in size.
Yeah.
And just think of all of the space you need for the cows and the chickens and the pigs and the corn and the wheat and everything else. So they build straight up.
Yeah.
And the community being, they have stores down at the bottom of these buildings that give you everything you need. You don't have to leave. And people run their lives around these stores. And these communities are really gated in. And yes, you can walk in and out anytime, but there is still a gate that gives you the concept or the idea that you're looking at something different, separate from everything else, a community in and of itself.
Yeah, in Vancouver, these tend to build up. There's a pretty good transit system, and so if you've got like a station in a subway system, and then the communities like that build it around. So what it means is people can get almost everything they need right where they live, and if they have to, they can just hop on a high speed train.
And they don't have to go out.
Yeah, they don't have to go out. They go out because they want to.
Out of the building, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's super. And some people want to be alone. But I've been to China 8 times, and I can't tell you that I've ever seen one single family home. I can't remember any because everything I've seen is apartment building. And
Yeah.
one couple who was very close to my wife, she's Chinese, had all the money in the world. And they bought just a very, very nice condo. And people don't buy single family homes there. That's why I happen to believe that self-storage is going to go wild there. And when I go there, I'm going to look into that. Because my sister-in-law had a very nice 3-bedroom apartment condo, and she had a one run with all windows going out, she was on a high floor, looking out to a wonderful view. But that whole area was filled up with her small son's toys and everything, and things that was storage in the house, and they can't sit there. Yeah. And so I think that bringing the concept and advertising it properly of self-storage would do very well in China.
Mm-hmm. And in China, it's likely to be a high-rise self-storage, right?
Yeah, we may go, it depends on what we see. What I'd like to do is I want to go there. I want to meet with the top attorneys in the big cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and they will have investors, and then we'll see. We're going to do market research first, and we'll see what will work for us.
No, that sounds like a great opportunity, a great place to do that.
And I happen to have a really dear friend in China. In fact, I call him my Chinese brother, and he and I will go around the country. He doesn't speak a word of English. I only know a couple phrases in not Cantonese, in Mandarin. And we're lucky that we are on a site called WeChat because it translates everything for you. But I bought little translators that are handheld, and when I go to China, I will give him one, and I'll have one, and we'll be able to talk to each other through these translators.
Yeah. But those, I think you mentioned earlier, those self-storage units are licensed to print money everywhere in North America too.
Yeah, they give you better cash flow than apartment building. Believe me, There are other things that give you much better cash flow, but you have to want to go in. One thing I didn't go into that's really important is, number one, don't go into anything that you're uncomfortable with. Number two, don't put yourself in a bind by investing in real
Yeah.
estate, because if it's going to change your life, if you're going to get stressed, if you're going to be unhappy, then it just isn't worth it. And there are two types of investors: those who buy things or build things and work them, and those who buy pieces of investments in a piece of real estate syndication, and they just get it. Going back to the cash flow, they just get a check every month or
Yeah.
every quarter, and my partner calls that mailbox money. It just
Mailbox money.
comes in the mail, and you go there and you spend it however you want.
Yeah. So I'm involved with a group of uh, mortgage note investors, right? Basically private lending. And one of the things was, if you're only as going back to being comfortable with it, said if you're only going to have enough money to invest in one note, you get something that's secure, it's a performing note. If you're going to buy, there's more money in the risky ones, but if you're going to lose sleep over, it's not worth it, right?
Well, the greater the risk, the greater the reward.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's been around for God knows how many years. Um, and I just don't want anybody to change their lifestyle unless they want to. If all of a sudden somebody came into money and they're going to invest in real estate and it will change their life for the better, I'm all for it, but I make sure that it's going to do that for them. I sit down and talk with my clients for a long time before they invest in real estate. And I once took a class years ago. It was a class in active listening, and I just sit there and I know I'm talking a lot here, but I just sit there and listen. And I had a client come in once, and she was a lovely lady. She happened to have been the vice president of this small hamburger company called McDonald's, and she was in charge of marketing from the Rocky Mountains to the West Coast. And I met her, and I amended 3 years tax returns for her and got her back $35,000
yeah.
because the prior account just didn't know what he was doing. And she lived in a city called Long Beach, California. And
Okay,
Long Beach has canals just like Venice, Italy.
right.
And she's on the canal, and she has a beautiful home. And she came in one day and she goes, I want to spend $100,000 on my kitchen and change the whole thing. I said, really? I said, tell me about it. And she talks, and I go, uh-huh. And then she talks some more, and I go, okay, yeah. And she talks more, and I go, tell me more. And at the end of an hour, because I had a clock right behind her, at the end of an hour, she looks at me and she goes, you're right. I'm not going to do it. And I didn't say a word. I didn't push it in any direction. I just wanted her to do what she really wanted.
Yeah,
And what she really wanted was on the surface, but we had to go down some.
yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned mailbox money, like one way to invest in real estate. Like with these note investors, there's a lot of technical things to learn about all of that stuff. But there are people who just have money and they want to return. And so there are quite a few opportunities where, as long as you trust the person, you put in your 50,000, 10,000, 100,000, and whatever it is, and then they send you a check, for whatever is agreed upon, the 8% annual income or whatever it is. So there's lots
Yeah,
of different ways of getting involved with investing.
yeah, and I brought that up, and you're absolutely right. But those people are not, in my eyes, true investors in real estate. They're just
Yeah,
investing their money in
yeah,
whatever is going to give them a secure and decent return on their investment. The anything in real estate. If you're a company that buys mortgages, it's very simple, because you buy the mortgage for a certain amount of money, and there is a discount involved in buying it, so that you get a return on your investment, or you get a return that you can pass through to your investors. And it's set up it's guaranteed from the day that the investment closes. And you can go into what's known as a triple net lease, where the lessee pays not only the mortgage, but the insurance, the property taxes, the repairs and maintenance, and everything else. And all you do is you get a check every month and you deposit it, and it covers your mortgage nicely. And you just have to make sure that the numbers fall out like that. And you're making these deals with companies like McDonald's and Burger King and all of the Del Taco, all of those fast food places or other places that do these things. And it's, yeah, I mean, McDonald's either can write money or they're going to pay you because they make so much of it. I heard something the other day about an athlete saying that the richest company in the world is Nike. And if you can ever, if they ever went into a real estate deal where they were looking for investors where they didn't want to use their money, that they were looking for OPM, other people's money, if it's Nike, it's a good fit. It's a great fit. Guys?
Yeah. Betty, what do you want to chip in here?
Well, yeah, I'm mostly listening. I'm doing some active listening here. Um, and I think the point about there being different kinds of investors is something to really look at. And, like if you just want to put, as you said, Paul, if you just want to put in some money and get some money back, then getting into a share situation with a company or an individual who's doing stuff like that with, say, note investing, like the people that Greg knows rather well, then that's a good fit because you're not going to lose sleep over it. If you're at a different place in your life where you're like, okay, I'm up for the challenge, I'm going to do this, and you're ready to invest in the property, work the property, go through all the nuts and bolts and ins and outs of running a situation like that, then that's the other kind of investor. And knowing which one you are is what's going to make your life better.
Well, you have active and passive investors.
Yeah.
And there is a question on every tax return. Did you materially participate in this project?
Right.
And material participation. We're going to go through what makes a real estate investor as opposed to a real estate professional either next week or the week after. So there are different things that you have to look out for. And you should never go into an investment without understanding the investment. I don't care if you trust the person, if it's your brother-in-law, look out even more. But if it's a relative, if somebody that you know cares about you, make sure that they know as much as you should know about the investment. Read up, ask people, call me, and I would be glad to talk to anyone about those investments and give them advice.
Yeah, that would be great. So I put in all the contact information for you underneath here. It's streaming across, and I also put it in the chat. So
you got it. I see it there.
Your phone number
818-298-4000.
Yeah.
And P. Levine at LS Property Partners LLC.com. And that is the same thing for our website. And then we have the Bible of Real Estate, which is what this title really is all about, because I was a teacher for 6.5 years, and I'm holding these classes, and I'm calling them classes to teach you about the situation.
Yeah. And while we're at it, I'm going to just show, Betty and I got involved with Paul because I guess, Betty, you started working with Paul on his book, The Bible of Real Estate.
Yeah.
And then I got involved to do a number of things, and then that's led to the Paul Levine show. One thing leads to another. But we do have, I'm going to just go show it here. We have the Bible of Real Estate.info goes into this page here, where it's got a bit of Paul's background and all that contact information that we talked about.
Yep.
And then we have the early version of the book is available in a digital, what I call a digital experience edition, and you can sign up for that for free and read it. And we're putting in a bunch of other interviews that Paul's done. Also, this broadcast will end up there, and so it's just
I've done a handful of podcasts with other
yeah, yeah,
presenters, so we're going to put all of those in here.
yeah, and Paul's got some really interesting, fun war stories, and that'll go in there. And also, we just added this recently. Paul's got a LinkedIn newsletter, and then if you click on the link there, you can get into that to subscribe, and you do that daily, right?
Yes, every workday.
Yeah. So every workday. So there are lots of resources, and it's only going to grow over the future. Like it's going to be, we're going to do this every week, and that's going to be some kind of topic, mostly out of the book, but it could be anything, right? Really.
Yeah, and those war stories that you mentioned, I had one that I loved. I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee for a week. That's a story. That's a story and a half all by itself. But when I came back to Los Angeles, I came back on a holiday, and there was a message waiting for me in my office that somebody from the Secret Service and from the IRS CID, and CID stands for Criminal Investigation Division. And they came to visit me, but I was gone. So they left their cards and they left a message. Well, I called them back, and it was funny. I called them back on a holiday, and I couldn't reach the guy from the IRS because it was a holiday. I didn't reach the guy from Secret Service, but they had voicemail, which is a whole lot better than nothing from the IRS. So anyway, I told them that I would be in the next day, and they showed up at the designated time. And the first thing I did was I looked at their credentials. And then we went into the office, and they were asking me things about a person, an individual who would go to the racetrack every day. And he had clients, and when his clients won, he would take the ticket and get the winnings in his name. And because these were some substantial amounts, there was a lot of withholding. And what he would do is he would take the money that they would give him at the window and give it to the investor, the person who made the bets, and he would end up at the end of the year with all of that withholding, and that was his fee. And my partner at the time had this client, and my partner was not feeling well, and I was there the day that tax return had to go out, so I signed it. So these guys wanted to see me, and we went into the office, and I assured them I had nothing to do with the account other than the fact that I signed it, and they were really nice, and they were saying how nice the view was from my office. I was in Century City at the time. And then we stopped for, they even said, or the guy from the Secret Service said, if I come to Washington and want to get the special tour, that he can arrange it for me, which I thought was very nice. So we were talking socially for a few minutes, and then I stopped and I said, there's one thing bothering me. And they both looked at me, and I said, there are two guns in this room. Because Secret Service carries a gun, and IRS CID does also. And the guy from Secret Service looked at me and said, good thing he didn't say three.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
You had to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called breaking the tension, right? Yeah.
Well, it's called going into anything that concerns you, and I won't shut up when I'm having a feeling or want to put something out there. And I was concerned that there were two guns in the room.
Yeah. Okay. So you suggested, what are we going to talk about next week? You had something in mind.
Well, next week I want to get into a couple of other things. I will probably either next week or the week after get into a real estate professional as opposed to a real estate investor. I want to get more into bonus depreciation and taking that depreciation deduction. I was just taking it for a client that I finished his tax return yesterday. So we'll be sticking to real estate right now for sure. And it's all going to be, and something may come up that refreshes my mind during the week about something else because I'm actively doing all of this.
Yeah. Awesome. So that sounds good. So tune in next week and it was my fault we were late today. So we will aim for noon on Thursday and hope to see you all there. And again, there's Paul's contact information, and you can sign up to get notices and replays and things at the bibleofrealestate.info.
Thank you, guys.
Any last words for the people as we let them go?
Yeah, if you want to know what's really going on in commercial real estate, Paul is the guy. There is nobody else who has the depth and breadth of knowledge and experience that Paul has. He's only scratching the surface right now. So just saying, and you really want to know.
Yeah, and also I think I heard you say, Paul, if somebody had a kind of a real estate investment offer that seemed a little bit dicey, you can talk to them and take a look at it and confirm whether their suspicions are true or not.
Well, I can't tell you how many doctors over the years who came to me with these tax shelters, they were called, where they were getting 100-to-1 write-off and losses that they can offset millions of dollars of income. And I look at it and I just laugh and I go, it ain't gonna work. Because the IRS has this thing that they say, if it's not economically feasible, we're not letting you take the deduction.
No.
Right.
And it's got to be a real for-profit venture.
Yep.
Okay.
You can't just create losses and never get them back other than by saving taxes.
Yeah. So I think there's maybe more than one person in the audience here that resonates with that. So Paul's available. Give him
I'm
a call.
here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to China until about a year from now. And when I'm there, I will have my laptop. And if I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be on a Zoom call, I'll do it. It's not a problem for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous. Well, thank you very much. And I think we'll call it a day, and we'll see everybody back next Thursday. And actually going to introduce Paul to another group that we do on Saturdays. So we can have more Paul.
I'm here.
Yeah. All righty.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.